How's it going, everybody? RazingHel here, and welcome back to another episode of Don't Starve Together MODlight. This episode, of course, is focusing on the Forge, and we're going to be covering about 4 new mods that I have personally either discovered myself or been recommended by other players that I think are really cool and can really help you achieve your goals while playing the Forge, whatever is left of it. I know there are just a couple of days left, but better late than never, I guess. So the first mod we're going to be taking a look at here is a client mod called Forge Speedrun Timer by Killer. This name is going to come up a couple more times this episode, so they're definitely a mod creator to follow. So the description of this mod is a speedrun type widget with a timer and automatic splits. Stores all successful runs in its mod folder. Click the timer to hide or show the detailed view. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in a video. In the lower right corner, you can actually see the mod in action. So this is the extended view of it. There's a more compact view of the speedrun timer, but it shows you each wave, which is handy if you're having difficulty keeping track of what wave you're currently on. It will give you an idea of what waves are coming up and what you can expect in those waves. But more importantly, it actually gives you the times. So by default, this is based off of the time there's like a default time that's set up when you initially install the mod, but after that it will record successful runs. If you fail, it's not successful, and then it will log them into its mod folder. There's a JSON file in that mod folder that logs successful runs that you do, and then it compares your best wave times against your current wave times. So as you can see in this case, I have not been this match here was not going very well for my team. We did pretty good in the first 3 rounds, but after that things kind of fell apart, didn't they? And in the lower right corner, it shows you the total time. It shows you how many minutes you are off in the left hand side of that box, and that pretty much covers everything that the Forge speedrun timer adds. You can decide yourself whether or not it's useful. I think it personally adds a lot of detailed information, the type of which I enjoy seeing. I know Don't Starve is more about obfuscating that kind of information, but I'm always interested to see some of the more technical aspects to it. I'm somebody who likes seeing a lot of numbers, even if I don't pay attention to all of them. In terms of the options for this mod, they're fairly limited, but you can move the box that you saw on the screen. You can change how fast the timer display updates. At the moment, it's set to 0 seconds. I haven't experimented with that. The minimum difference between splits. The next mod we're going to be taking a look at here is called Forge Damage Meter, also by Killer. It displays the total damage, DPS over the whole match, and damage done to the last 2 targets. And it saves the total damage done to each mob from the latest match in a file to the mod directory in case you want to go ahead and poke around in there and see the match specifics. So as a bit of a demonstration here, I have brought in a video that I recorded of a match using this mod. It appears in the lower left-hand corner by default, and there are 2 sort of important numbers, and then there are also the 2 last enemies that you attacked and how much damage you did to each of them. So the top number, of course, is your total damage for this match, and then it's also broken down into damage per second, 8.1, not very good. Here we get a little bit better with 1.3 damage per second. These numbers are based off of the damage that you've done throughout the entire match. It's basically the total damage per match divided by time spent in the match, right? And then there, of course, there's the damage that you've done to the last 2 enemies, and there is a full log of that in the mod folder for the last match. It doesn't log multiple matches, just the most recent match. So I actually should check that out a little bit more, do a little bit more research into how those numbers work, because I haven't taken a look at those personally. That would be one area that I could improve in here. In terms of the options for the damage configuration, they are pretty simple. There is the ability to turn, there's a hotkey to turn the display for it on and off. And then you can also adjust its location on the screen if you don't like where it is by default. Another mod that we're going to be taking a look at here is the Forge Cooldown Timer, also by Killer. It displays the cooldown timer for activity ability on current weapon. There's a chat announcer for when the timer is less than a certain value, which is disabled by default. So you might have noticed here in the example video, there is a number that's right above your character health and equipment. Right now it's 8.5, and this tells you in numbers how long it will be, how many seconds it will be before the equipped weapon that you have will finish its cooldown, and then you can use it again. For example, right here we can see with the Infernal Staff, it's going to take another 16.8 seconds before it finishes cooling down, and then the player is able to use it again. And in the options, we can actually change this to do interesting stuff. By default, all of these are disabled, but you could turn them on. For example, if you're interested in letting the players know how long it will be before the player can cast the Life Blossom with the Living Staff, you could turn this on, and then it will automatically announce in the chat the time left until you're ready to cast it, which could be especially helpful with newer players who aren't quite as familiar with how to go about attacking the Grand Forge Warrior. I know a lot of times they don't stop attacking in time, so that could be very helpful there. Here in the options, you have the option to adjust how much time is left on the cooldown timer before it announces any of these options down here. So for example, by default, if you left it at this, it would be 3 seconds left to cool down whatever weapon you had equipped before it would announce it via the chat. Now, I don't have an example of this because I never actually enabled it in chat, but I believe it is pretty straightforward. If you have ever seen the chat in Don't Starve Together the Forge, you have a pretty good idea of what to expect from this. But aside from that, it just gives you useful numbers that you can use to better coordinate with your team, even if you don't have the chat enabled. I would recommend putting the chat enabled, perhaps for games that you play with lower level players. I think it really will help them coordinate better with you. But you want to be careful not to become too spammy with this, because obviously if you enabled all of this stuff and you're constantly spamming the chat with cooldowns that are largely irrelevant, it really pollutes the quality of discussion, and it'll probably make a lot of people upset with you, a lot of your fellow teammates. So just be judicial in how you use it, which ones you decide to enable here, but I think it can be a pretty powerful teaching tool in addition to just allowing for better coordination between team members. The last mod that we're going to be looking at here is called Send Alert by Ice Grog. It adds buttons over the inventory that sends a quick alert to your team about what you will do. Healing, Petrify, Meteor, depending upon your weapon or your state. Besides optionally added keybinds for the mentioned message. So what this does is when you have a weapon equipped that's enabled, at the moment it does not apply to all weapons. I know it applies to the Infernal Staff and Healing Staff, or the Living Staff. And what it does is give you a button right above your inventory. Unfortunately, it's overlaid on top of the cooldown at the moment, but it can be adjusted. It gives you this button that you can click on, and it will send a message to chat when you click on it. For example, with the healing, you can click on it and it'll say healing, don't attack. So you probably want to save that for the Grand Forge Warrior. Otherwise, some people might be confused because you obviously don't want to attack all the time when the healing. You don't want to refrain from attacking anytime the heal is down. Otherwise, it'll take a lot longer to finish a match than it ever should. That is for the healing right there. As I mentioned before, here's one with the Fire Staff, and you just click this little icon. It only shows up when you have the weapon that corresponds to it equipped. You don't have to worry about having a whole bunch of buttons to spam. When you are downed, there's also a little skull icon that you can click on that says to the chat that you're down and that you need to be revived. Which of course is a little bit questionable as to why you'd need a button for that, because obviously if you are down, you probably have plenty of time to actually type it into the chat. But it's a nice little quality of life improvement nonetheless. Not a whole lot of options here. I guess we do have a few different language options, but I find this especially helpful for teaching newer players in public lobbies, more so than anything else. This is not something you're going to want to be using with mid or higher level teams, or with somebody that you're able to actively communicate with like over voice chat. So that covers an additional 4 client-based mods for the Forge. These all are confirmed working as of the date of this video. The links to them will be included in the description below this video for your convenience. If you like the mod, be sure to thank the creator by rating it up on the Steam Workshop page. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching as always, and I hope to see you next time.